Hello everyone, welcome to this video on pricing and revenue management in the supply chain context. In this video, we're going to be talking about what is revenue management, what is pricing management, and how it applies to a supply chain. This is an introductory video. So let's begin. Now, we have to understand the role of revenue management in the supply chain. So that's the first and important piece. So what is revenue management? So revenue management is the use of pricing to increase profit generated from a limited supply of any supply chain assets that you have. And there are two forms that you can have. You have capacity and inventory, and you can vary both of them. And revenue management is the way in which you can maximize your profits in this using these two assets, right? So let's take an example. So let's say that there is a trucking company that has 10 trucks. Now let's say that suddenly it finds that it has too much demand and it cannot satisfy all its demand using just those 10 trucks. What are the options that does it have? One obvious option is, well, the company can acquire more trucks, thereby be able to satisfy more of the demand, right? So that's a usual way of um, responding to customer demand, increase in customer demand. Now, revenue management, using revenue management, there are three other strategies that you could potentially use. There are three ways in which you could potentially increase your profits. One is you could have customers who are willing to wait for longer. So you can have customers who are either willing to order way in advance or book your capacity way in advance, or are willing to wait once they place an order. You can offer them a lower price. So the whole idea behind revenue management is change the price, use price as a lever, not just capacity and inventory, but use price as a lever to increase your profits. So you could offer low prices to customers who can wait longer or order earlier. That's one option. The second option is you can have customers who sign long term contracts with you, who say that, okay, in a year, we will definitely use your trucks for 200 days in a year or 150 days in a year. And they sign these contracts where prices are locked in. For customers like that, you can offer them a lower price. Or you could also have scenarios where you charge higher prices when demand is high. Right? And this is a thing that we see very often, right? Uber is the best example of this. When demand is higher, you get surge pricing. That's the whole business model of Uber is based off of revenue management, right? So that's the idea behind using pricing as a lever and using revenue management in supply chain. Right? Now, when is revenue management useful, or when does it have a significant impact on supply chain profitability? Well, one of these four conditions must exist, and that's when you should realize that, well, let's use revenue management as a tool. One is the value of product varies in different market segments, and this is very, very important. So you might have a product that different people view differently. So there are some people who will definitely need it on a continuous basis. There's some people who might not need it at all. Again, Uber is a very, very good example of this. There are people who don't own their own modes of transportation, and instead of taking public transportation like buses or trains, they might depend upon Uber, in which case they book Uber very often, right? The other is things like apparel. So apparel is another example where the value of a product varies in different market segments, right? So as long as you have that, it might be useful to have a differential pricing for the different levels of market or different market segments that you're looking at. So that's one option. The second is the product is highly perishable, or product waste occurs, right? So product is perishable, in which case it might make sense for you to have revenue management. Very good example of this is, say, airplanes, seats on an airplane. Now, seats on an airplane are perishable resources. Why? Because once the airplane takes off, you cannot sell any more inventory. So let's say you have 100 seats, you've sold 90 seats, your airplane is going to take off, the 10 seats are wasted. You cannot make any revenue off of those 10 seats. But if you're able to offer those 10 seats at deeper discounts, maybe there are people who were not willing to buy seats before are willing to buy seats now. So when products are highly perishable and product wastage occurs, revenue management useful. The other place that you see this very often is hotel rooms. Hotel rooms are also perishable resources in the sense that if nobody books a hotel room for a night, you're not making any money from it. So it's a perishable perishable resource. Right. Now, the other important place where revenue management is useful is when you have high variability in demand. You have seasonal peaks or you have seasonal troughs in demand, and there are some times when demand is very low, sometimes when demand is very high. In which case, for you as a company to survive in the long term, it is good to have some sort of revenue management, right? So there are companies that say ice cream is a very good example, or even umbrellas are a very good example. When you buy them during either the rainy season or when it snows, they're priced higher than say in the middle of the summer when some people buy it for the heat, but not a lot of people are buying umbrellas, right? So seasonal peaks. Now, the final case where revenue management is useful is when product is sold both in bulk and on the spot market. The best example of this is warehouse space. So, companies sign long-term deals for warehouse spaces, but sometimes companies just need some warehouse space and they buy it on the spot market. So, when a product is sold both in bulk and on the spot market, it is good to have revenue management and variable pricing. Obviously, because if something is sold in bulk, you'll probably get it for cheaper than when it is sold on the spot market, right? Okay, so that's the basic idea of revenue management. Now, this occurs. So revenue management is useful when you are managing a single products. You have a single product and you're trying to figure out what to price it at, what kind of variable pricing to offer, and whatnot. Now, pricing and revenue management are also useful when you have multiple customer segments, as we talked about, right? So differential pricing increases total firm profits. So the two fundamental issues that must be handled in practice. One is how does a firm differentiate between the two segments, right? And structure its pricing to make one segment pay more than the other. Again, going back to Uber, you have regular Uber, you also have Uber XL, right? So there are different tiers. If you use Lyft, for example, and you're willing to wait for a while, they'll charge you a lower price. So how do you differentiate the different segments? So that's one important. And how do you structure the pricing and so that one segment pay more than the other? Now, the other important issue to understand in practice is how can a firm control demand such that lower paying segment does not utilize the entire availability of the asset. So you have to set some of it aside for the higher paying segment. Now, a good example of this is is internet usage. So when let's say you sign up for Xfinity, right? So Xfinity has a line that goes through a whole neighborhood, and the whole neighborhood gets internet through the same, say, let's say high speed fiber optic line, right? Now there are different people in the same neighborhood who might have signed up for different plans. Some of them might have signed up for cheaper plans that offer lower speeds, and others might have signed up for more expensive plans that offer higher speeds. In which case, even if there is capacity available, sometimes Xfinity will throttle the speed of customers who have paid less because they want the capacity to be available in case the higher paying customers have needs that suddenly need to be met, right? So they don't want the whole availability to be used up by lower paying customers. So these are two fundamental issues that need to be handled in practice. And even with Uber, sometimes you book a regular Uber, but you sometimes end up with a car that might have actually been an Uber XL car, right? That's because there's nobody ordering Uber XL for a while, and so the car has not been making any money, so they might just accept a regular Uber ride in which they're making less money than a Uber XL ride, right? So things like that. So these are important questions that need to be answered. So how does variable pricing occur? So one way to do variable pricing is something like this. Now this is a simple way of doing variable pricing. Uber actually has a very complicated model for variable pricing. that is different from this. Now, this is called a linear relationship. This is a linear variable price where the relationship between demand and the price is linear. So this says that so demand is related to price this way. So if price is, let's say, $0, if you're not paying anything, the demand is set at 10,000. But that doesn't mean anything if you're giving something away for free. So this is probably the capacity that you have available, right? And for every dollar that you increase the price by, the demand goes down by 2,000 units. So if your price is at $1, demand will be 8,000 units. If price is $2, demand will be 6,000 units, and so on. So if price is set at 250, your demand can be expected to be $5,000. So this is a simple way of representing demand for in multiple customer segments, right? So here is another example. So this, if price is set at 350, the demand will be 3,000. If price is set at $2, demand will be 6,000. So this is something to keep in mind. So what I'll do is I'm going to break the video here. In the next video, we'll look at how you look at pricing when you have multiple segments, and how you manage pricing when you have multiple segments, and how you how do you set the price for different segments, basically, right? So we'll look at that in the next video. All right, take care.